And that'll decrease the power of that button, of that reaction, and it'll put you in a much more empowered space to act how you want to and to be more confident in really any situation that comes up.
And now for something completely different.
Welcome to
Surrounded by Idiots
Radio Podcast.
Hey, welcome back once again to the Surrounded by Idiots Radio Podcast. I am Tony Dufresne, PhD. I am here on whatever platform you happen to be listening on for a podcast, as well as on YouTube. And if you are so inclined to be on Alexa, I'm one of the flash briefings that you can listen to every single day. The theme of the show this week is how to stop overreacting and overthinking. Have you ever heard of parsimony or the law of parsimony, also known as Occam's razor? Have you ever heard of that term? It is a problem-solving principle that states the simplest explanation is usually the right one. And as a small example, ask any online computer tech person, and they will tell you that they live this every single day because more than likely, in a lot of situations, when a person calls up for computer help, the first question every single tech asks the customer, is it plugged in? A lot of times we get into situations where we tend to overthink because we don't trust our inner self or our inner voice in regards to understanding whatever we're dealing with good enough to make a decision. Sometimes we get into a situation where we overreact because we are scared or it pushes a button of something that's way more complicated than what it should be. And that's why this whole thing about overreacting and overthinking, let's just knock it down to like the lowest common denominator. And if we're going to be looking at any situation that you're involved in any time of day, in any day of the week, in any week of the year, it all comes down to grounding yourself and understanding why you're overreacting or why you're overthinking. And that leads me to a couple quotes from Meditations from Marcus Aurelius that are extremely powerful in this context. And let me read them to you. The first quote is, "Endeavor always to see in everything what is it that causes your opinion, and unfold it by distinguishing the cause, the matter, the relation to other things, and the period within which it must cease to exist." Which basically means we go around every single day with a suitcase full of stuff. And what happens is we're looking to unload that stuff on people because it's unreconciled issues. And if somebody tips us off and reminds us of something, then we kind of throw all that on. That's an overreaction. And in a lot of instances, we start to overthink things because we don't trust ourselves, and then that gets into overreaction in and of itself. So that's why it's important to understand the context of things and to realize that the things that are in front of us aren't necessarily places where we need to resolve our old childhood issues. The second quote is, "Perceive at last that there is within you something better and more divine than the immediate cause of your sensations of pleasure and pain. Something, in short, beyond the strings which move the puppet." When you get into situations where you're overthinking or you're overreacting, a lot of times it's some sort of a puppet master moving you around and you're really not in control of the situation as it stands right there and then. And that's why it's very important to kind of go back to the very, very common denominator of things, which is just you in the moment. Simple. It's simple. It's simplicity. It is parsimony. It's Occam's razor. Where are you at in the moment? What is your context in the moment? It has nothing to do with all the extra stuff that you're wearing. It has to do with solving the problem that's in front of you. It has to do with dealing with the person in front of you as them and not as a representation of your dad or your mom or something. So the question is, who's moving you? Who's the puppet master on this thing? Who's pulling your strings? And who's pulling your strings is you, but it's more of your subconscious you, because we always go around trying to resolve our old issues with people. And the more pissed that we get and the more that we overreact and the more that we overthink about stuff, the more we want to get solutions to these issues because they're driving us bananas. Then we try desperately to solve these issues with other people, and you'll never be able to solve them, and it makes things worse. So with the ability to take a step back and the ability to actually see yourself right before you're going to overreact or right before you're going to start overthinking and then do something that you're going to not be happy with later, if you get the chance to do that little interrupt right before, it's going to give you a level of empowerment because you will not follow through on that natural reactive pattern that always gets you into trouble or always gets you to the point where you're like, man, now I got to say I'm sorry because I totally went ballistic and the situation really didn't deserve that much of my energy. So that's what it does. It allows you the ability to not go there. It allows you the ability to see things more in context in terms of like the now and really get to solutions or get to being more effective in your communication. So the call to action today is, well, how do you do that? Well, let's look back on a recent situation to where you went off and threw a lot more energy, a lot more gas on the fire than you should have. And right now you're looking at it going, oh man, I really shouldn't have done that. So let's break it down. Well, first of all, what happened? Second of all, what was your first impulsive thought when that happened? What was the trigger? What was the button that got pushed when that thing happened? I mean, did you get mad? Did you get defensive? Was there a level of shame? Was there a level of frustration? Was there a level of anxiety? Were you scared to death? I mean, what was your first impulsive thought when that happened? Then you can look a little bit further down and say, wait a minute, what button did that push? What is that button that's that raw, open wound that I have that got pushed by this person because they triggered something that reminded me subconsciously of something that I haven't resolved and it is weighing on me? Sometimes you can't go that deep. It just doesn't happen because your subconscious blocks you from getting to a succinct answer on that. And again, sometimes it really doesn't matter if it's an exact answer. What matters is you understand that there is a source for the extra energy that shouldn't be thrown out at this person or in this particular situation. So last but not least, in this process of you kind of looking at this past experience, the acceptance of that power button, the understanding that it does exist, will gradually decrease the power of that button. It's all about awareness. And that way you don't have to go back constantly and say, you know what, I'm sorry again for chasing you around the house with a butcher's knife. So again, in looking at this, what happened? What was your first impulsive thought? What's the button that was pushed? Where did that impulse come from? And then accept the fact that it is there. And by the way, it will never go away. It will never go away. But what you can do is understand that it's there, and when it gets to the point where you're about to react to that, you can stop it. You can pattern interrupt yourself and not follow through on that extra energy that goes out to that person or in that situation. And that'll decrease the power of that button, of that reaction, and it'll put you in a much more empowered space to act how you want to and to be more confident in really any situation that comes up. I hope things are good. If you have any questions or comments, you know how to get a hold of me, Tony@javabud.com. You can go to sbirpodcast.com for all of the podcasts, almost 300 episodes that I've been doing over the past 6 years. You can go to sbirpodcast.com. Please rate or review if you're listening to this on the major platforms. It just helps me getting out there. Of course, I compete with like 500 million people doing this. So it's always good. And if you do get some value out of this, let me know if you do, because it's always good to hear from you. Or if you don't get any value out of this, let me know what I can do to give you or to help you get some value. It's Tony@javabud.com, JAVABUD. I hope things are great. Be good to yourself, be good to others, and I'll talk to you next week.